Hi, I'm Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. My goodness, I didn't know so many people could fit into this studio, which is essentially my living room. And you'll slowly hear the audience as the podcast continues passing out because we had to turn off the air conditioner in order to not having a hum in the background. So it could be that in order to encourage the air conditioner to go back on, we're just all going to hum, and see if that would, there you go. You can do all kinds of cool things with an audience. Anyway, so it's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. If you're listening on tour anytime, or wherever you listen or watch your podcasts, we are happy to have you along. Episode 52. We now have 52 episodes. We are playing with a full deck. And you'll have to work that out on your own. So we have a dedication this week by the Geller family. Le'iloi Nishmas, their father, Yaakov Leib ben Shaul, on his 25th yahrzeit this week on Yud Elul, 25 years. I'm almost there with my father. It's amazing. It's amazing when loved ones leave us, the hole that they leave in our life. So it should be an aliyah from the neshama, and the entire family should get a tremendous chus. And it's almost, it's in Elul. We're Elul. We're halfway into Elul already. My goodness. Time flies whether you're having fun or not. Yeah. I just, started a new shir in Ramat Beit Shemesh on Tuesdays, and we just had the first one. We're going to have one next week, next Tuesday, and then next Tuesday is elections. We don't have on election day. And then we have one more, and then Tuesday's Rosh Hashanah, second day Rosh Hashanah, and then the next Tuesday is Kol Nidre. So it's amazing. If you're counting by Tuesdays, time is flying. We're moving along. And I want to speak about something this week that really I've wanted to speak about for a long time. I was trying to see how I could possibly work this in on any decent level. I finally figured it out. Now, I have to say, by way of introduction, I'm going against the Beferish Gemara and Avodah Zarah. I'm telling you that up front. Because Gemara and Avodah Zarah asks, Chanina ben Tradian, who was one of the Asar Harugei Malchus, one of the 10 martyrs, why did he die? What was the crime? In other words, granted there was a meta-historical force that took place that united these 10 people. But each one had their own story that was going on. That's one of the great things when you're HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you're God, you can juggle lots of different things. So each one of these people had their own reason why they died, and yet it fit together into a meta-historical context of the Mechiras Yosef, of the sale of Joseph, and all those kind of things. It all fit together. Anyway, so it says, why did he die? Because he taught with the Shem of Farish Barabim. He taught with the ineffable name of God that you're not supposed to speak out. It wasn't actually Yud Kei Vav Kei, it was a different form of the name. And he did this in public, and he was not supposed to. And the Gemara asks, why did his wife die? It says his wife died because she didn't stop him. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz in Sichos Musar. I don't understand. Granted, his daughter, Bruya, we know, is listed in the Gemara as a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar in her own right. Mrs. Chanina ben Trajan, you don't find the same thing. And even if she was, to say that you're on the level of being able to argue with a Tana like Rabbi Chanina ben Trajan, you have to be somebody really exceptional. Who says that she was even holding in a position to be able to argue? And listen to what Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz says, because it's an unbelievable thing. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a bina yisera to a wife to know whether or not what her husband is doing is right or not. And he ignores her at his peril. That is my introduction. I used to teach in seminary, and one time I had the seminary girls over at my house, and I was saying something, not different than I usually would say in class, but my wife was there. She says, Rabbi Orlofsky, I don't think you should say that. Another time, Rabbi Orlofsky, I don't think that's what you're trying to say. Or Rabbi Orlofsky, I don't think that's appropriate. And this went on through the evening. The next day in class, I started to say something, and one of the girls said, if your wife was here, she wouldn't let you say that. I said, you're right, but she's not. So I'm about to tell a story that my wife urged me not to tell. And I apologize in advance. not just to her, but to all of Klal Yisrael, because I'm going to tell the story anyway, even though it borders on the inappropriate, and everyone knows how I struggle to be appropriate. That's why everybody watches this, because it's like watching a high wire, walker without a net. Then you're wondering what's going to happen. Now, you could edit this out, and in fact, people have seen that sometimes in the podcast there are like little blips, and they figure something was edited out. We never edit out the content. When I used to write for the Hamodia, they used to cut out whole pages of my articles. They just said, oh, this is too much for our people. All we do is when I mispronounce words, or you leave out that part where I say, and I remember I was speaking to, Semi, who was I talking to? So the producer takes those things out because he doesn't think that that's professional. And we strive for professionalism here on the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Anyway. So that's the thing, is that you never know what to edit out. That is the problem. Anyway, so I want to tell you this story, and I'll explain to you why I'm telling you this story. I struggled, because I really wanted to share this, because I can't afford therapy, and I just talk out my problems in public. So I really wanted to share this story, because it was deeply moving to me, and I finally realized how it could possibly be relevant to the greater Torah community. And I'll explain it as follows. We spoke last week about the shofar, and the role of the shofar is to wake us up. Aru, aru. Wake up. The shofar hits us on a primal level and tells us to wake up and live our life. Because most people live life asleep. And life passes them by. And they don't realize. And the way I put it was, most people live the life that happens instead of the life they want. And this is so often the case. It says that tzaddikim are not affected by the Eish of Gehenna because they're Eish in this world. What does that mean? There is no fire, obviously, because you're in a neshama. You can't burn a soul. So what does it mean? Fire can never exist in a state of rest. It's always kinetic. And tzaddikim are kinetic. So what's the fire? It's a mashal for embarrassment. And we get up to the next world, and they show us what our life was. It's embarrassing. And after you finish watching your life, then they pull out the second CD, and this is what your life could have been. And it's the contrast that's so difficult. But for a tzaddik, they show the first CD, and he's going the whole time, oh, I could have done that better, I could have done that better. And at the end, he says, okay, let's see the second CD. And he said, that was the second CD. You lived the best life that you could. And that becomes the ultimate idea, that we want to live the best life, and people sleep through life. They let things happen. They don't think about it. They don't decide, is this the life that I want? And so how am I ever going to arrive at a destination? I'm never going to arrive at a destination if I don't know where I'm going. That's the biggest problem. Somebody stops you and says, I'm from Long Island, So somebody stops you and says, can you give me directions? I said, where are you going? I don't know. I said, in that case, take the Northern State. It's more scenic than the Long Island Expressway. I don't know where you're going, but it'll look nice. Go through Fire Island. Beautiful ride over there. I think it's called Ocean Parkway down there also. Go for a nice drive. Go up the Pacific Coast, highway. Beautiful. But is it going to take you where you want to go? But people don't know where they're going. And so people just live their life, and at the end they turn around and they ask themselves, is this the life that I wanted to lead? And more often than not, the answer is no, because by pure chance you may have arrived at the most meaningful life, but if you don't stop to think about it. So you have to think about what your life is about. Rabbi Salanta says there are several steps you have to do in order to prepare for Rosh Hashanah, and one of them is to figure out who you want to be at the end of your life. Stephen Covey, in his classic work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says every business has to have a business plan. Yeah, and they have a motto, they have a direction, they have something that describes the essence of their business, and their decisions will be based upon that. So you can often see what business really represents. GM found out there was a problem in one of their cars, and it was going to result in a certain number of deaths. So they considered making a recall, but they realized that the recall would cost more money than just paying the people who got killed. This came out later, and so they were fined and sued for an enormous amount of money. But you see what their motto is. You see what their purpose and meaning is. To make money, even if it means killing people. That's obvious. Other people may have a different business plan. He tells a story about this one hotel that he was in where people were so helpful. He needed something, he needed markers or something, and there was a worker who was on top of a ladder. It wasn't his job, but he was on top of a ladder and he was cleaning something, and he came down and he went to the back and he got me the markers, And I said to the manager afterwards, he says, I teach how to run businesses. How do you do this? He says, we had a meeting of everybody in the hotel, from the lowest employee to the top management. And we said, let's figure out what the purpose is. And we decided the purpose of our hotel is to provide the best possible service to every guest. And that was their motto. That's how they lived and experienced their entire business. So he says a person has to do this on a personal level. How do you do that? Write your eulogy. In other words, what is the life that you want to have looked back on? Because everybody wants to have lived a meaningful life. They just don't realize that in order to do that, you have to live a meaningful life. So people live an average life, but they want to be remembered as having lived an exceptional life. Yeah. So I'm sure we've gone to funerals where one person didn't get the memo, and he tells the truth. Harry loved to smoke cigars. That's all Harry did. Read the paper, smoked cigars, drank scotch. That was Harry's whole life. And Harry's lying there saying, there must be something else. Nope, sorry, Harry, that was it. There was nothing else. There's a magician by the name of Flosso. I was a magician in my younger years. I still am. I managed to make money disappear so quickly you can't even believe it. It vanishes before your eyes. But there is something called a silk flower production. And the way this is usually done is you bring out a cloth and you reach underneath and you pull out this bouquet of flowers. Flosso had a magic store in Brooklyn, and my father took me there. It was a few years before he passed away. And I'm talking to him, and he says, kid, you ever do a silk flower production? I said, sure. He goes, I do it barehanded. I said, really? He says, watch. He goes like this, and boom, makes it appear. He says, that's my move. I'll be remembered for that move. And a few years later, he passed away. And I thought to myself, Flosso figured out how to do a barehanded feather flower production. Slow clap. Understand? That's how he's remembered. That's how you want to be remembered. That was your main contribution. The fellow who invented the Pringles can when he died, every hesped said the same thing. He invented the Pringle can. He designed it so it should look like tennis ball can, and he was able to fit in the Pringles, and that was it. That is how he was remembered. He lived a very long life, and that's all anybody had to say is that he made the Pringles can. It's sad when that's all you're remembered for. I forgot his name, but the guy who wrote the Hokey Pokey passed away. It was kind of tragic at his funeral. First they put his left foot in, and then all the trouble started. But anyway, you get the idea. I once heard a comic say, what if the hokey pokey is what it's all about? That's it. All of life is the hokey pokey. Anyway, but that's it. That's it. What are you remembered for? Yeah, the woman who wrote Happy Birthday, that song, who, by the way, patented it. Officially, every time you sing Happy Birthday, you're supposed to send her money. Yeah, but copyrighted, probably, not patented. But it's, what are you remembered for? So I'll tell you why I find this interesting. I got sick a while ago, a couple of months ago, and I've been dying to tell this story. I got sick. What I suffered from was severe constipation. The fancy name is impacted bowel. It'll be the title of the next Rabbi David Kaplan book. Anyway, greatest impact. But anyway, I was suffering from impacted bowel. Now, this was pretty serious, right? It's embarrassing, but it's pretty serious. They were doing x-rays. They didn't know what to do. They were giving me this medicine. They said, you might have to go to surgery, So what do you do when there's something wrong with you? You Google it, right? I looked it up, and sure enough, it can be fatal. You can die from this. Then my wife said, you can die from everything. They have to write that, etc. And I said, I'm going to die from severe constipation. I said, that will be the ultimate irony, and explain to you why. I became frum at the age of 12. I did it on my own. I did it based on intellectual considerations, not because I went someplace for a Shabbos and was inspired. Yeah. I battled learning disabilities my whole life, a whole bunch of learning disabilities. I was president of my youth group. I made all kinds of different events when I was in high school. I taught in a Hebrew school. Kids had to read when I was in high school. I became the chapter advisor of a chapter in Los Angeles, which had 6 kids. At the end of the year, we had 60 paid members, and many of them went off to yeshiva. We made quite an impact. I became Long Island director for 9 years. I started the region with 1 member. At the end, we had over 2,000 kids involved in all of our programs. I then picked up my family and moved to Eretz Yisrael, which was not easy, leaving family and friends behind. I was mashkiach in yeshiva. I taught in a seminary for almost 20 years. I taught in Eshet Torah. I taught in Or Sameach. I taught in Neve Yerushalayim. I taught in many other places. Yeah. I'm a speaker that I've spoken in South Africa, Australia, England, Canada, the United States, many different venues, many different places. And for an entire week, my loved ones will be gathered together discussing my bowel movements. That'll be it. That's it, because when somebody dies of that, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about what he did, but that goes, did he try prune juice? Did he go here? Did he take this? And I'm just picturing my children and my wife sitting around for a week discussing my digestion. And that's all that would be left. That would be all that I would be remembered for. And it would come out and say, Rabbi David Orlofsky, American rabbi, passed away from severe constipation. And that's it. It's kind of ironic when you think about it, because, people have often asked me, what do you want people to say at your levaya? Look, he's moving. Okay, but people say, what do you want on your tombstone? I said, if I could write my epitaph, it would be, he tried. And in context of this story, it comes out with a whole completely different meaning. Anyway, I share this with you because it was really pretty frightening. It was really frightening. And when you are confronted with death, and I have been confronted with death, yeah, after I had what was a heart attack, and I did not know it was a heart attack, and they did an angiogram. After the wire came out, the doctor looked at me and said, I don't know why you're alive. You're not getting enough blood to your heart to keep you alive. And he wasn't a religious doctor. He said, someone up there must like you. And suddenly it hit me. My gosh, this doctor is telling me that b'derech hateva, I should be dead. I just had this discussion with somebody the other day, and they say, how's everything going? I said, can I complain? Every day is a gift. I'm living on borrowed time. B'derech hateva, I should have died 5 years ago, and I'm still here. Amazing thing. In fact, before that Rosh Hashanah, somebody said, so what do you want for this year? I had a heart attack, a bypass operation. I said, just a better year than this year. He says to me, you ingrate? You were supposed to die, and God kept you alive, and all you can do is complain? I said, you're right. I want a year just like this year. Chastei Hashem. But when you're confronted and you ask yourself, okay, at the end of my life, what am I going to be remembered as? And it's a scary thing. When people look down and they stop and they look at their life and say, is this the life that I wanted? Is this what I want to be remembered as? I borrow from literature, if I can. Les Miserables, if you actually read the book, it's a very, very long book. It's a classic, by which it means it's about 800, no, not, that's an exaggeration, about 300 pages too long. That's how you know, if you ever read Conrad's Secret Agent, that is a 10-page book that they dragged out for 125 pages, I don't know how. But Les Miserables goes on forever, and the reason is because every now and then he goes off 80 pages on a tangent. At one point he escapes into a convent, so he spends 80 pages talking about the convents, things like this, At one point he escapes into the Paris sewer system. He spends 80 pages talking about the history of the Paris sewer system. So, but in this, Jean Valjean, who is so bitter and so nasty, he's become so hardened because he stole a loaf of bread for his family that was starving, and he got sent to prison. And he tried to escape twice, and each time they added to his sentence because of that. And so by the time he comes out, he doesn't know where his family is, he doesn't know if they're alive or dead, he doesn't have anything. He's just a very bitter, miserable person, Les Miserables. He's a miserable person. And he comes in, and you have to show your card that you're a convict, so no inn would let him in, and no place would let him stay. There was this one bishop who let him stay, welcomed him into his home, gave him to eat. And after everyone went to sleep, he stole his silver candlesticks. He got caught. They recognized him. They brought him back to the bishop. The bishop says, I gave it to him as a gift. And he walks down the road, and he is shocked by this act of such extreme kindness. And he's sitting by the side of the road thinking about this, because maybe my life is different. And this kid is walking by, and he's flipping a coin, and the coin falls, and Jean Valjean instinctively puts his foot on it. The kid says, give me back my coin. Doesn't say anything. He says, come on, give me back my coin. He says, beat it. And the little kid runs away crying. And he looks down, and he starts crying. And he says, I've become so miserable. And he chases after the kid, but he can't find him. And he dedicates his life at that point to changing it around and making his life into something meaningful. There are people who do this for real. They stop and look at themselves and say, I can't believe what I have become. Sometimes people hit a nadir. People hit such a low in their life that they can't believe it. I had a bacher say to me once, Rebbe, I did the worst thing in the world. I said, I don't believe it. He says, no, I did. I said, you killed your mother and ate her? So he says, no. I said, oh, Baruch Hashem. I said, that's not even the worst thing I could think of. That was just the first one that came to mind. You know what I mean? I could think of even worse. No, he keeps missing mincha. But, but to him, that's the worst thing in the world. But every person reaches a certain point where I just can't handle who I've become. How do you get that way? You get that way because you make one poor decision, followed by another poor decision, followed by another poor decision, and at no point do you ask yourself, where am I going? Who do I want to be? Says Rabbi Salanta, in order to be able to make the Yom Narayim meaningful, you have to start by asking yourself, who do I want to be at the end of my life? What is my mission statement? Where am I going? What do I hope to accomplish? What is my epitaph? What is my eulogy? How do I want to be remembered in this world? And everybody wants to be remembered as somebody good and noble. A mafia hitman doesn't want anyone to tell the truth. Vinny, he was a great killer. He killed many people, and often in creative ways. Remember one time he was holding this guy over the back. They don't want to say that. They're going to say, Vinny was a good friend. Vinny was good to his mother. Well, come up with something good, because nobody wants to be remembered as a terrible person. Everybody wants to be remembered as great and as noble. But if I want that, HaMelech, king. And we all know, Kila Hashem HaMelucha u'Moishel Bagoyim. Hashem has the kingship and he rules the nations. What is the difference between a Melech and a Moshel? A Melech is a king, and a Moshel, he is a ruler. He rules because he is forcing himself on the people, and nobody has the power to stop him. He's a dictator, he's a tyrant. Yeah, he's going to be in charge. Som tasim alecha melech. You have to agree to make somebody a king. It doesn't come from some weird thing. I am Arthur, king of the Britons. King of the who? King of the Britons. I didn't vote for you. You don't vote for a king. How do you become king? The Lady of the Lake, clad in the most shimmering sapphire, brought forth from the bosom of the water Excalibur, thereby signifying by divine decree that I am your king. Listen, strange women living in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive command can only come from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. I mean, if I said I should be king because someone threw a sword at me, well, they'd put me away. Now, that's true. That's true from a Torah point of view. That's from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, by the way. But it's true. People have to make a king. Now, what's pshat in a king, for real? A king is a symbol. Leiv kol ha'am, says the Rambam. He is the heart of the people. He represents what it means. What do I mean? I like to read history. I have read some incredibly boring books in order to prove my dedication to the study of history. I look back at that moments now and I regret it. But one of them was a Harvard professor who wrote a book about Andrew Jackson called Andrew Jackson, Symbol of an Era. And what does he say? He says there were certain people who were bigger than who they were as people. They were a symbol. They represented something. Yeah? So that Andrew Jackson, we talk about Jacksonian democracy, he represented something. Thomas Jefferson represented something. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, these people were bigger than the people of who they were. They represented something that was bigger than themselves. People agreed that these people captured the heart and minds of their people. And so you can go through history and find different characters throughout history who were greater than the position they held. They were a symbol, they were an idea for something bigger. Yeah? Rabbi Wein says that many stories that are told about Gedolim are not historically accurate. He says, but you can understand the person based on the type of story that they tell. So a certain type of story is going to be told about Reb Chaim Oizer, and a different type of story is going to be told about Reb Chaim Briska, and a different type of story is going to be told about the Chavetz Chaim, even though they all obviously encapsulated all aspects of Avodas Hashem. But there's certain areas and the stories, the telling, were able to capture that idea. I mentioned King Arthur, right? King Arthur in the legends that were written during the Middle Ages, that wasn't King Arthur. It was clear from historical records that he lived during that period of time when the Romans left England and the Anglos and the Saxons were coming in to capture it from the Romans and the British who were there, who were Celtic people. And the conflict that went on, there was a character there. It's fascinating historically, but it had to have been in the 500s. There was no way that it was in the Middle Ages. There weren't knights the way we think of knights, and all those kind of trappings. They looked more like Romans. In fact, I read a book once, The Search for the Real King Arthur, and he says where the name Arthur probably came from is since the Romans spoke Latin and the Celts spoke Celtic, so there's a reference in the writings of a contemporary fellow referring to this great leader who was called the Bear. So you know how you say bear when you always talk about the constellation, the bear, it's the Ursus, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, right? And Arth is a bear in Celtic. So Arthurus would be bear in both languages, putting it together in order to be able to capture this idea. So, but he was a symbol. It doesn't matter whether or not the person existed the way the stories were told. The point was that he was something bigger than himself. A melech means that this is the person whose picture we're putting up on the wall that I want to be like. And when I was growing up, I will not embarrass myself by trying to draw from, today's culture because I can't keep up. But when I was a kid, there'd be sports players, and people would want to wear their sneakers that particular sports player was using. So I wanted to associate with him. I'm going back a very long time. Yeah. There was this great basketball player called Michael Jordan, and he came out with his own fragrance. Now, I don't know what there is about Michael Jordan that makes you think you would want to smell like him. Yeah. But the point was, I want to be like Michael Jordan, so I'll buy whatever he's selling. Yeah. And it was true about music people. And it was true about performers, actors. They would come out and endorse something, and you wanted that because you wanted to be like these people. On Rosh Hashanah, Klal Yisrael says, you know who I'm putting up on the wall? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaMelech. Som Tosim Alech HaMelech. We're making him the king. He's already in charge. But I'm saying, I want to be like you. I want to emulate you. I can't wait to be king. You understand? I want to take that in and make that my life. You think about that. The Yud Gimel Midos. We say the Yud Gimel Midos, and it brings us kapara. We say it during Slichos. We say it a lot during Yom Kippur. Interestingly enough, we don't say it on Rosh Hashanah. Right? We say it when we take out the Torah, but it's not the Yud Gimel Midos because it doesn't start with the Vayikra, which the Gemara in Bracha says is an essential part of the Yud Gimel Midos. But how does saying the Yud Gimel Midos work? The answer is not saying it, trying to become it. Mahu Chanam Barachum, Afator Chanam Barachum. Just like he is merciful, and he is forgiving, and he is truthful, and all the good things that he has, we try to emulate that in our life because we want, when people see us, to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know those really nice stories with the Chavetz Chaim? Like really nice stories. I had somebody once who was coming to Eretz Yisrael. He says, can you hook me up with a Mekubal? I said, I don't really know Mekubalim. I know people who do. I could put you in touch. He says, you don't go to Mekubalim? I said, no. He says, but it's so cool. I said, okay. I'm not impressed by that. I said, you know what I find so cool? This boy came to the Chavetz Chaim for Shabbos, and he had traveled through the whole night, and he was falling off his feet. So Chavetz Chaim said, go take a nap. He says, I'm afraid I'll miss davening. He says, don't worry about it, I'll wake you up. The boy goes to sleep. He wakes up, and he sees it's dark outside. And he walks in, and there's the Chavetz Chaim sitting at the Shabbos table. And he says, Rebbe, I fell asleep. He says, don't worry about it. I didn't have the heart to wake you. You had such a long trip. Come, daven Ma'ariv, and then we'll eat. And he sings Shalom Aleichem, Eshes Chayil, and he says, where's the Rebbetzin? He says, she was tired. She went to sleep. He makes Kiddush. They have the Suda. They sing Zmiras, the Torah, and he makes sure that the boy is asleep. And then he goes to sleep. And the boy is tossing and turning. He wakes up. He goes to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and he sees it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And he realizes that the Chavetz Chaim waited a whole night till close to dawn to eat his Suda so that the boy shouldn't feel bad and eat by himself. Wow. Full disclosure. If a guest is 15 minutes late, I start getting very upset. I can't believe this. Are we going to wait for them? Are we going to wait for them? I don't know. Are we going to wait? Should we wait? I know we got kids here. Should we wait? I don't know. Wait. Well, maybe everybody else could eat, and you could wait for him and make Kiddush with him, like the Chavetz Chaim. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I wearing a T-shirt that says Tzaddik on it? Tzaddikim, whenever you see one of these terrorist attacks, you read the vignettes, they're all big Tzaddikim, not me. I'm going to live to a ripe, old, cranky age. Nothing's going to happen to me. But anyway, I hear a story like that, I'm so inspired. And you know why the Chavetz Chaim was so nice? Because he's a shadow of 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 HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because he spent his whole life trying to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that when they had an ecumenical debate, and for the benefit of my yeshiva guys who get upset when I use big English words, when they'd have an argument about religion, in Radin, and they had Catholics, and they had Russian Orthodox, and they had, I don't know if they had any Protestants, and they had Jews. It says, the Jews always played their trump card. They'd say, show me a religion that ever produced a Chavetz Chaim, and they would all quit. Because even the non-Jews looked at him and saw godliness in that person. A Kadosh Baruch Hu goes up on the wall. That's who I want to be like. I want to be somebody who's noble and good and kind and giving and loving and tolerant and understanding. And when we look back in life and we look at those moments when we were small and petty, we're not proud of ourselves. And we look at those times when we were great. We say, yeah, at the end of my life, I want them to say, yeah, he strove to be great. And you could see godliness inside of him. And that's what we have to work on now with Rosh Hashanah coming. Figure out, who do I want to be at the end of my life? When I turn around, who do I want it to be? Zochrenu l'chaim, melech chafetz b'chaim, v'kosveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, l'mancha l'kim chaim. I am still available for the high holidays. Anyway, remember us for life, grant us life, God of life. We want life. Why? Because we want to live. Why? Because I don't want to die. Because you want to be alive. Why? What do you want to live for? God has a terrific sense of humor. Yair Lapid, of course, killed the joke, but they used to change the clocks here before Yom Kippur. That's when they would change back. So we're sitting there pouring out our hearts to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, grant us another and more life, give us life. And God says, okay, I'm giving you an extra hour. And everyone says, great, I can sleep late. He says, that's what you want life for, so you can sleep? You could be dead and do that. Yeah? You could be dead forever. I asked a group of teenagers once, what's the greatest pleasure in the world? And they said, sleep. So I said, then I bet you can't wait till you're dead, you'll sleep forever. And they said, no, because I'll never have the pleasure of waking up and going back to bed. I don't mind being dead if every few years I open up, everyone's still here, turn over the pillow, go back to sleep. Understand? Then I'd be fine. We want to be alive because we want to do something. What is it we want to do? That's what we have to define in Mirz Hashem. That's the first step in our avoda coming now. We have to wake up and decide who we want to be. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com where you can add comments, see my upcoming schedule. You can contact me directly. And like the people in this room, you can be part of the actual podcast audience. Oh boy. Yeah? And of course... And if you want to sponsor an episode, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast, click on the sponsor an episode button, and you can be part of this unbelievable movement. That's it for this week. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.